And live.
No, we're going to see ourselves here.
We're live.
Oh. I'm moving stuff and we're live. All right. Gina, are we good to go? Okay. I'm going to take that as yes. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining today. This is No Cap Wednesday. I'm Uriah Baker, a product of Benton Harbor, Michigan, and a graduate of Countryside Academy. Shout out Cougars. And for the next 5 weeks, every Wednesday night at 7 p.m., I'll be having an honest conversation with some influential community members, from healthcare workers to ministers to community organizers and even educators, about solutions for a better Benton Harbor. So be here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. This is our second live. And today our guest is Tracy Burton. I wanted to speak to Tracy today because she is someone who I met through community work. Her love and zeal for young people inspires me, and I wanted to hear her perspective. Let me slow down. As a young Black entrepreneur and educator, on how together we can make our community better. Tracy, do you want to introduce yourself a little more?
Yes. Thank you, Uriah. First of all, I'm super duper excited to be here with you on No Cap Wednesdays. Like you said, yes. And I was supposed to have a No Cap shirt made, but life, right? We're not living in normal times.
I'm going to wear mine next week, so just be ready.
Okay. So then I can get inspiration from you. But yes, I don't know what hat I'm wearing today, but I wear many different roles. I'm a mother. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I'm a community influencer, educator, entrepreneur, all of those different things. But above all, I am currently just serving in my community. I've been back home for close to 5 years, and it has been a ride. It's been a ride, to say the least.
I'm sure of that. Every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. I'm sure of that. All right. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to start off with something that we call a miracle question. That just simply is, if you went to sleep tonight and woke up in the morning to the perfect Benton Harbor, what does that look like to you? What's different? What has changed? And how do we achieve that?
For me, it would be definitely the arts programs would be back. I am a product of the arts of Benton Harbor. I went to Creative Arts Academy. Shout out to CAA. We have a long-standing fight between CAA and GNT, and I'm here to start it up. I represent CAA, okay? CAA, and also a product of the Boys and Girls Club of Benton Harbor, in particular, our drama and dance program. And I say that because I've had the opportunity to serve in many different parts of this country, and there is no talent like Benton Harbor. And I do truly feel like bringing back the arts in really a meaningful way that is culturally competent would be a perfect Benton Harbor for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's part of the work that you do, right? Inspiring young people in education through the arts, right?
Yes, and in particular, hip hop. Yes, so I love rap. I love hip hop. I think, and you couldn't attest to this as well. I think between hip hop and gospel, that was really infused in our childhood in Benton Harbor. Growing up in the church choir. So we got the gospel side, then you go to the Boys and Girls Club and we doing the dance battles. And growing up with Sierra and Lil Jon and all those different influences. And through my work and research in hip hop pedagogy, I have seen an amazing return on investment with teaching young people through hip hop and reality pedagogy in particular.
That's so interesting. I want to double click on that and stay there for a moment. How do you think that hip hop and I guess that culture affects our young people in Benton Harbor?
Whew. That is a really loaded question. I think that we have some of the most talented rappers in Benton Harbor. I think that a lot of the music that's out there right now, I listen to it, I engage, but I do think that there's an opportunity for it to be a little more positive.
Hmm.
But I think that it really ties into mainstream media and like a lot of the other influences where there's a lot of violence in the music right now.
Yeah.
And a part of my work is really in media literacy. And do you remember when Tracy Ellis Ross was doing like T Murder and she would like read these famous rap lyrics on Instagram?
No, I wasn't. I don't think I saw that.
So just imagine Tracy Ellis Ross, and she's like reading a G Herbo lyric or like a Drake lyric, and she's like, okay, so I walked down the street and I slapped somebody. And of course, I'm being mild compared to what
Hmm.
we know the music actually says. So that's something I do. Imagine me, this young teacher, and I'm like reading the lyrics back to them, and they're like, oh, no, I didn't mean it like that. I just like the beat. Well, this is a part of like building that capacity and understanding that it's not just about the beat, it's also the lyrics and what we're actually putting out in the atmosphere, and the music is really important. So I think the talent is definitely there. I think a part of my role and a part of the work that I get to engage in is really getting young people to think deeper about hip hop and how it has really shaped us as a people, what we've really used it for in the past. Like if you really think about Jay-Z and Tupac and um Queen Latifah, like it's been movement music.
Yeah.
And that is what I love so much about hip hop.
You mentioned that you think that some of the best artists are in Benton Harbor and from Benton Harbor. So, what do you feel some of the other important strengths of our community are?
Definitely resilience. I think that Benton Harbor is home to some of the most resilient and beautiful people ever. Um, I think one of the most heartbreaking things about this work is being exposed to the deep inequities. As
Hmm.
a youth, I didn't have that language, right?
Yeah.
So last year I was featured in Time magazine, and it was in this juxtaposition of Benton Harbor being um, the eighth most segregated school district border in the country,
Hmm.
and understanding that wealth gap. So
Yeah.
as a kid, I'm not comprehending that. Now as a community activist and a community leader, living with that tension is hard. And then also seeing it as an adult and experiencing some of those things as well. Um, you there to still see smiles, to still see people reaching their dreams, to still see people building businesses and raising families and buying homes, even with those statistics, is inspiring.
Yeah. And the Times is a big deal. Like, congratulations to you. Shout out to you.
Thank you.
But with that idea of institutions, large institutions like the Times, how do you expect institutions like that to engage in communities like ours? And what does authentic engagement look like to you?
I'm glad you asked that because, in particular, I thought that Time Magazine did a wonderful job of what I consider equitable reporting. They flew in somebody by the name of Kevin Carey, and he didn't come in with his own research, right? Said, this is what I view about Benton Harbor. I came in from Washington, D.C., and because of these news clips and because of this, I know everything about Benton Harbor. I have the stats, I have the statistics, and this is what it is. He engaged with people that were on the ground. He engaged various different perspectives and voices. And I think that is true, authentic engagement. Is I think institutions have the resources, but not always what's the word? Help me. Not always the
The
knowledge of what's
knowledge?
actually going on, right?
Yeah.
And understanding that there is so much strength in the proverbial streets, right?
Yeah.
I was just gonna use institution and streets. We the streets, and then the institution, right? So there is so much knowledge, and just asking somebody who lives in the neighborhood, or just asking somebody who frequents a local gas station, or asking someone who is raising children in this community, um, what do you think about this? How can we better serve you? How can we better engage you? Versus, I think a lot of times we come in with our degrees, and we can probably relate to this. I have my degree now. I have my research,
Hey.
and I'm an expert. And no,
Right.
like we're never going to be an expert on anyone's life, on anyone's lived experience. And I think that's been the most humbling thing for me, because let me tell you, I got a rude awakening when I stepped into uh, this grassroots type of work,
Yeah.
because there is no degree, there is no grant, there is no research that can prepare you for
This
real work.
worked. Yeah. And I think now is the perfect time to shout out Spectrum Health Lakeland, who is sponsoring this, because uh, this is exactly what you were talking about, having those authentic conversations with regular folks out in the
Yes.
community. Also, shout out to Tasha Walton, my girl, who was
Yes.
she was our guest, our first guest at that last week, and she spoke her mind and spoke about her experience as a makeup artist in this community and things that she hears from the community. I mentioned last week that oftentimes voices like hers are overheard. I mean, over what's the word
Look,
I'm looking for? Overlooked. There we go.
overlooked. Yeah.
Overlooked, because they don't have the proper verbiage or don't have the proper the politically correct sayings. But in real life, those are the people that we need to hear. And I think that's why it's important, the kind of situation that we're doing right now. These
Yes.
type of conversations are super crucial. Um,
Absolutely.
so with all that being said, that you were just talking about the work that you do, what are some of your biggest priorities for the young people in Benton Harbor?
Uriah, honestly, like if you would have asked me this a year ago, I would have had a whole theoretical framework. I would have had a thesis statement ready for you. And I want to be completely honest to say that I really am at a crossroads, and that
Yeah.
COVID has shifted everything for me. And as someone who engages with youth, when that first lockdown hit in March, I remember the exact day. I remember exactly where I was when they closed down K through 12 schools. That was heartbreaking for me, because I
Yeah.
knew I wasn't going to be able to touch and feel my students like um, this work truly requires.
Hmm.
I would say that literacy is always going to be a number one priority. How that
Yeah.
looks, I know that when COVID first hit, I did a book club called Pretty Girls Read, and I engaged some of my former students, and we did Zoom calls and worked on fluency and building comprehension. So that was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
I'm also working on some hip hop inspired projects with some local artists. But if I may be honest, you're right, it's been really hard.
Yeah.
It's been really hard trying to think of ways to engage, right? And I want to give anybody else who is in this space and in this work permission to say that this is hard,
Yeah.
that none of us expected to be talking to each other over a screen. None of us expected to try to figure it out, right? And I have a lot of plans, but quite honestly, my main concern is really the mental health of our students,
Hmm.
really hearing from them, because we have our degrees, right? We've already went through primary school, we've already gone through secondary school, we've had the opportunity to go to college, and our students are living in a time that they didn't ask for. None of us did, right? And I want to be able to be that listening ear, so that I'm not what we, accuse organizations of doing, that I'm not busy trying to come up with plans that I think will work for the youth. But
Yeah.
I'm honestly in that space, Uriah, where I'm authentically engaging. I'm texting, I'm talking, I'm calling, and I'm letting that inform my work. And for somebody who is a planner, that's a hard space to be in. But I do think that it's going to make me better, and it's going to make the work more meaningful, because it's going to be informed by what's happening right now versus what I wish or hope to happen.
See, and I think that this is causing us to really pause and uh, really second look at the things that we've been doing for so long and how we can make them better and how we can change them, especially when it comes to computer literacy and technology literacy and the creative arts. Like, it really makes us have to look at these things again, because now we're having to engage our students in a whole nother way. And I
Absolutely.
also want to take my hat off, no pun intended, because this is No Cap Wednesday,
Yes.
to all the teachers out there who
Oh my
are being forced
gosh.
to have to navigate these spaces and doing it as best they can. And to the students, shout out to y'all too.
Teachers, oh my goodness, you all deserve the world. You deserve unlimited PTO, unlimited vacation, $1 million an hour. Like, seriously, this for somebody who even has a teacher's heart. I'm not even in the classroom. My heart, listen, give yourselves some space to cry, right? Because this is new. This is hard. Like, we want to be able to hug our students. We want to be able to look them in the face and know that they are okay. We want to know that they are getting the resources that they need. And quite honestly, I can't say with 100% certainty that that's happening. How can you be sure?
Right. I definitely feel that. Um, so with that being said, what role do you think that the arts can play in helping generate the change in our community, especially in times like these?
Well, and we talked about this before we kind of got on air about
Mhm.
holding space for the fact that what a week, right? What a day.
Yeah.
And for me, listening to music and creating music is my escape, because every time I log on Twitter, it's like the world is on fire. Every time I log on Facebook, the world is on fire. So imagine what our youth are, we're our brains are a little more developed and a little more formed. Imagine these students going through this adolescent phase and they have no clue what's going on. I think that the arts helps with some of that, the mental health support. I think it helps with those fine motor skills. I think it helps with the confidence building. I think the list is endless on the different ways that our brain is engaged when we're talking about the creative arts. I also think that it helps build community, which is
Yeah.
missing, right? Like when kids get to create together. And I actually just finished working on a project with an 11-year-old girl from Benton Harbor, and you all will hear more about that very soon. But I did just drop a little nugget, so be on the lookout for that. The smile on her face during that production process, and I can't say too much right now, but it does boost confidence, it does boost morale, and it's good for all of us, not just the creators, but it's also great for the consumers as well.
Yeah. I'm not sure if the project that you're talking about is the one that I'm thinking of. Is it the one that I know about?
um,
Maybe not. Okay. So then I'm gonna bring it up. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for bringing it up. Um,
okay.
the project that you just did with Spectrum Health on the COVID, I can't think of the name of it right
Play
now.
your part.
Play your part. It's so funny
Yes.
that you were talking about that community, because the community that the arts build, because um, we were sitting in the office. I went into the office for something, of course, masked up, um, and we were talking about it. And
Hmm.
that's the power that power that the arts creates. Like, it builds those bonds and those bridges, where we're in the office talking about, hey, mask up, like, because it's about, it is.
It
um
is. Thank you.
and I'm so excited. I can't wait for that to drop in, to be put all around. So how does social media play a positive or negative role in our community, do you think, as a teacher, as an educator, as someone who speaks for um, media literacy?
So let's start with the positive, right?
Okay.
I think because Benton Harbor is so small, when let me tell you something. I don't when Benton Harbor wins, we all feel that. I don't
Yeah.
care if it's Scooby that made that last minute shot at the championship game. It's like it feels like we are not just the town of 10,000 people, right? It feels like we own the world, right? And I think that we have that same energy sometimes when it's negative, that we can also perpetuate those negative things because it is so small. So I think it's a double whammy, no matter whether it's in Benton Harbor and another community. I think that that's something that I want our young people to learn as well, is that if you have a social media page, you are an influencer.
Yeah.
Point blank, period. Nothing that you put out into the world, especially on the internet, goes away. We say that, but that's for real, because receipts and
Right.
code and all of this that we have going on, it will, it'll come back, but not just negatively. There are things that I've posted on my social media that I didn't think people were paying attention to, and it led to an opportunity, or it led to a job, or it led to a client. And that's what I want our young people to see, because I'm around some young people who they post a picture, you right, you see it, 700 likes in 3 minutes. I'm like,
Yes.
how? That
Yeah.
is influence. And I'm telling you, like, the influencer marketing industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Listen, like, you can make money from your social media pages.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Companies will invest in you for influencing your audience on a particular thing. So I think once
Hmm.
we build capacity and help our young people understand their influence and, how they're positioned in the world, we'll see more great things coming out.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That I think that we underestimate the power of social media because it literally influences everything that we do. And we
Yes.
don't even think about it. It's subconscious sometimes. You see that ad, I think on Instagram right now, is every other picture there's an ad. And you're seeing
Mm-hmm.
that and it's not really registering in your mind, but it's definitely taking effect on us. And just imagine our young people, because they're in that malleable stage still. So they're taking in
Absolutely.
and absorbing all of that information that they're seeing on social media. I recently did a podcast with RJ, shout out to her. And
Yes.
that's one of the things that someone that I interviewed was talking about, how social media has basically raised our young people. And it's something so interesting because I would even go as far to say that teachers and young people have raised our young people, or have raised our young people.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers and social media, I mean, I think I misspoke. Um, because parents are working, and unfortunately right now, like, they have to work multiple jobs. So then they get home from school after being raised by the teacher, and that's not their job, by the way. And then they're on social media all day. So it's definitely
Yeah.
very interesting and an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. I think what you're speaking about too is something I think about often, is shifting our youth from being consumers to being creators.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, you have young nephews or young people that you're around. I have a daughter. They love watching other kids on YouTube. I have
Yeah.
never seen like, you would just, like, what is it about watching somebody else play on YouTube that is so intriguing?
Mm-hmm.
And that is also a part of my work, is showing students that, okay, so you just sat here, you add to their watch hours, you added to their subscribers, they're getting paid from that, they're monetizing off of their content.
Yeah.
So how do we shift our students from being consumers, watching 7 8 hours of YouTube and social media all day, versus planning out content and influencing in their own way? I think that is the next shift, honestly. But I think it's about building capacity, because we can't just assume that our students know that, or that our
Mm-hmm.
families know that. Um, it's each one teach one.
Yeah. One of the highest earners on YouTube last year was, I think he's like an 8-year-old boy, and it was literally him opening up new
Toys,
gifts. Yeah, and then playing with them and giving a review. And I'm like,
right?
listen, I will dress up as a toddler to make the money that this kid is making
Do you hear
to
me?
review toys.
I told my daughter, I said, sweetie, let me tell you something. You got a couple more months before you about to start a YouTube channel, okay? Because you keep asking for my phone. Mommy, I want to watch Blippi. Yeah, you're about to be Blippi in a minute. because we're about
Okay.
to learn how to monetize. Okay, sweetie.
Listen,
Everybody in this house gonna do something.
who playing with toys for free? Not I.
Not I.
All right. Well, so I have another question here. Kind of shifting gears. What specific role do you think institutions like Spectrum Health, uh, Lakeland, Spectrum Health Lakeland, plays in supporting the ideas of our community?
Hmm. Definitely resources. I always say that there is not a lack of talent in Benton Harbor. There is not a lack of ideas. There is not a lack of competency. There is certainly a lack of uh, equitable resources and appropriate opportunities. I always seriously thought that it was like a secret society of people who knew how to obtain these certain things in this area. And the more that I engaged and the more that I got around the right people, it wasn't so much that the information wasn't out there, which leads to why I started my own marketing company. It was that some of the marketing was not reaching our community.
Mm,
We're considered a hard to reach community, and some of that language honestly creates barriers. Hard to
yeah.
reach, at risk is, you know, I think that we, as in being in the institution, we have an obligation to shift some of that language and shift the way that we deliver services, shift the way that we engage with community, shift the way we market, be open to new voices at the table, be open to new voices in leadership, and be open to literally plans being thrown out the window. Because, like I said, I
Yeah.
could come in with a great plan and say, you know what, I think that we need to open an ice skating rink and all the kids are going to come. And my kids could be like, Miss Tracy, that's lame. And I have to be okay with that. But um, honestly, you're right. I think the biggest thing um, that has impacted me living in this area is the language that is used to describe people in Benton Harbor. Um,
So let's
I
double
think
click
that
on
plays a
that.
part. Yeah.
Let's double click on that. How do you think that the people in these positions should shift their language, and what are some of the language that you think that they should be using instead?
I would even go to ask who and what informed that language.
Yeah.
I live in St. Joseph right now. I serve and I work in Benton Harbor. There's a stark difference in how both communities are described.
Hmm.
So let me just even make it even more plain. Um, we did some work with the census, and the census considers certain parts of Barron County hard to reach, right? Because of different things. We did some events at Smiley's. We did an event at Sunny Spot. We did some laundromat events, and we actively engaged our community. I think that we changed the language, first of all, by identifying what are some of those biases in that language. What are some of those things that are just not useful anymore? And we change it by going out and actually meeting people, going
Yeah.
out actually. And shout out to Latoya Turner. I hope she's watching this. Latoya is like, she will post up at Royal Beauty. She will post up anywhere that is popping in the community to serve people. I think that that was the
Yeah.
biggest shift for me as well, is understanding, why are we consistently asking people to come to us?
Right.
Why aren't we going and using our resources to serve in the community?
I always say that. Let's go to where the people are. One of my passions is actually social media engagement. And I'm like, why are we always trying to reach young people through newspapers? Like, come on now. When was the last time you picked up the newspaper? We're all on social media, so let's go there where they are and reach them there. So I'm definitely feeling that. Earlier in the conversation, you were speaking about rap music and all of that. Um, And that got my mind to thinking, what is one of your superpowers?
I knew you were going to ask that. So, excuse me. One of my superpowers is that I can rap, right?
Ooh.
So I haven't I didn't prepare my rapping right, so please forgive me. But in college, like, little wild college days, I used to call myself T Rax, like T Money, T Rax. And I always found it so fun. And if any of my friends are watching, they're cracking up because we would just sit around and like play beats and we would just like freestyle. And it's just something about the cypher type of feel of hip hop because I don't know, like I thought I was killing it, but maybe I wasn't. But that's just like the beauty of creativity is like, who cares how it sounds?
Yeah.
But cypher is like, if you can like freestyle, you a real rapper. Like if you can like out the back of your mind, you could come up with a metaphor and you could come up with something that rhymes and a simile and a hyperbole. Like I love it. Like you could tell, like I sit up and watch YouTube all day. Not all day, but I love watching ciphers. I love watching battles. I love hip hop. I love like understanding the behind the scenes of music and why um people make that. So that's another thing that I'm after. I did some research and only 2% of women are producers in music. And I
Wow.
don't actually have the accurate data for what that means for African American women, but I've been unconsciously competent in creating music for a while now. And I'm like coming for that spot. Like I love it. And I want to expose more young women to not just being an MC, but like what does it mean to sit at the decision making table
Yeah.
for producing music?
All right, T-Rex, I feel like you need to let the people hear a good a good little something, and I think that we should be able to judge if you're actually a good one or not. I need everybody in the comment section to either comment if she's good, if she killing it, send those heart emojis and the like emojis. Let her know that she killing it. Let's hear
I'm
something.
not
T-Rex.
ready. I'm not
Listen,
ready.
I'm gonna
Listen,
hype you up. I got you. You need me to spit a
no, you're
beat?
right. No. Listen, because you gotta like this is a you know what I'm saying? This is a corporate platform. I don't
I feel like you can spit a good equitable rap.
Oh, equitable rap. Okay, let's see an
Listen,
equitable rap.
you need me to spit a beat? I got you.
Oh my
No, I'm just
gosh.
kidding. I don't have you. So you're on your own.
I can't. Listen, I can't. That was actually on my list to like write a rap, so it would sound like I was freestyling. But I'm out of it. Listen, I'm burnt out today, so I will get that. I will have my team send that to your team, and then on the replay, we will have it together.
Listen, okay, we can edit that in there.
Yes.
I love that. That is hilarious. Okay, so we are coming up on a close, so I just have a few more things that I personally want to know. Um, One of
Yeah.
the things that we talked about before, I feel like the audience should know that when Tracy and I first spoke, it was supposed to be a really quick conversation. We ended up on the phone for at least an hour. Um, we were just chit chatting. Tracy was amazing, and I was so enthralled in the work that she's doing. And one of the things that she mentioned is she is a Black woman entrepreneur. Is there any advice that you have for, number one, any entrepreneur out there, and number two, any young Black woman entrepreneur?
I have so much advice. Number one, I would say never ever doubt your brilliance. I think that there is such a lack of representation in this area for young Black women entrepreneurs to say, okay, I can be like this woman. There's a template, there's resources for someone like me. When I got into the entrepreneurial game, I was selling t-shirts, right? So shout out to Not Basic. That's still my parent company, but I transitioned out of selling t-shirts and I now have a marketing company and then I also have a production company. I would say you would be so shocked like the mental like turmoil in the sense that I went through to say, okay, I'm actually going to believe in myself. I'm going to put this business out there. I'm going to, write up contracts. I'm going to go for it simply because I didn't feel all the way ready.
Yeah.
But if you only wait until you're ready, that day quite possibly can never come. Another thing is never be afraid to ask for help. I love it when young women entrepreneurs hop in my inbox and they say, "Hey, like, can you help me with this? What do you think about this?" Like, that's the only way that we're going to be able to make it is by resource sharing and pulling one another up. I would absolutely not be where I am today had it not been for the wonderful mentors and coaches that imparted so much into my life. I would also say don't be afraid to invest in
Yeah.
knowledge. I feel like this last year, I had the opportunity to be a part of a couple business incubators. And then I also invested in a 12-year, not 12-year, Lord, 12-month business accelerator. And I
Mm.
had to make some sacrifices. Okay. I couldn't,
Yeah.
I had to eat in. I couldn't buy wigs. I couldn't, go travel. However, the the way that that business accelerator expedited my knowledge, I'm 26. Okay. I was in rooms with people from all walks of life. I was in rooms with multi-million dollar women who looks like me. And it's something to be said about that. Don't just get your information from social media. Don't just
Yeah.
get your information from YouTube. There's great things out there, but there are some things that are going to cost you. But of course, that took me a couple years to get there. So definitely take in all the free knowledge that you can. But when you get to a point where you know that you have a certain gap in knowledge, don't be afraid to read and research and invest in yourself. And lastly, I want to say that a big part of why I do feel like my business is successful is because I lead with mission. There's
Yeah.
always going to be a give back proponent to anything that I do because I do believe that that's important. I do believe that while making money is the bottom line of business, nobody goes into business and say, "Oh, I don't want to make money." No, we absolutely want to make the most money that we can.
Hmm.
Um, but a part of that is also with that money, what impact can we make in our respective communities? And for me, it's literacy. For me, it's women entrepreneurs. For you, it might be gun violence. For you, it might be teen pregnancy. Um, but invest in those things. Don't just be focused on self and what the business can do for you, but think about how you can position your business to actually make a difference in the world.
Yeah, definitely. Man, that's so powerful. Um, you mentioned in there your age. You said that you're 26, and I found that interesting because I was reading an article not too long ago, and it was talking about how Gen Zs are the number one entrepreneur, or coming up on being the number one entrepreneur in the
Mm-hmm.
U.S. And shameless little situation here. I'm a Gen Z. I know that's shocking, but black don't crack. Uh,
Okay.
but I'm a Gen Z, or the end part of a millennial, and that entrepreneur spirit is really heavy in us. And I think it's really interesting, even the perspective of someone like you. I believe you're a millennial.
Yes.
So having this conversation with someone who's a millennial, and kind of seeing the stark differences between opinion and how we feel about things, and how if I was having this conversation with my grandmother, which I have had conversations similar to this with her, and how different those are. Because, as a matter of fact, I
Yeah.
mentioned some of the interviews that I have done before, and I interviewed her, and her sense of community, it was something so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Just being able to, and we all heard the stories about how you can go to your neighbor and ask for a cup of sugar, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. I don't even
Yeah.
know who my neighbors are. Listen,
That's real.
they would look at me crazy if I knocked on, "Hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar?"
They what? It's Corona season. Number one. What you at my excuse me? It's
Yeah.
16.
Okay. I'll put
Yeah.
it on the end of a broom, stick it out. But
Right.
no, like for real, it's totally different now. That sense of community, that lack of community. But it's interesting how that our age kind of shifts the way that we see, shifts our perspective. It's really interesting, and it's really interesting in the work that you and I do as well, because you are shaping young minds and the next
Hmm.
generation. You're shaping the Gen Z mind right now.
I'm so proud of Gen Z. Like, I have a special place in my heart for Gen Z. I think that millennials, we get a bad rap for being a lot of different things, right? Um, However, I think that Gen Z is very mission minded. You
Yeah,
all really led the charge for gun control. You really led the charge for climate change. And, I think more of that, right? More of giving accolades to the generation coming up, because I do think that there is a generational um, disdain. I don't know if
hmm,
that's the right word, but it feels like we could do a better job, millennials, of reaching out to Generation X, and Generation X reaching out to us, and baby boomers reaching out to us, and us reaching out to baby boomers. And I hope I said all of those right. But, my heart wants to see that. Instead of saying you millennials are so blah 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 blah, like, why not engage with that brilliance, because it is brilliance. It's different, but um, I learned so much from Generation Z. I learned so much from my more seasoned friends as well. And I do think that we talked about that, you're right, about the code switch of, it's very appropriate for us to talk to each other about entrepreneurship. But if I were to talk about entrepreneurship to my grandparents, it may be like, okay, but where's your stability? What about your
yes,
401k? What about your benefits? And while all of that is valuable, don't get me wrong. And that's another thing. Don't quit your job if the Lord ain't told you that, and you be out here, like, let's be clear. There's some truth to that. However, I think that there is something to be said about stepping out on faith and following the path that God has for you. And it won't make sense to everybody. That's okay. But I think that we have to hold space and hold respect for all opinions and all generational perspectives, because we have to also understand that these opportunities didn't exist for our grandparents. We
yeah,
are literally living in the dreams of our ancestors. We're living in the sacrifices that they made for us. So, part of it is that they not that they don't appreciate it, but it was literally non-existent.
yeah. Listen, it is so crazy that you said that because before this, I was actually on the phone with my grandmother, and I was
Uh-huh.
explaining to her the shout out to her because she may or may not be on here. Hopefully, she got on good because she doesn't have a Facebook. And I was trying to explain to her how to get on here without a Facebook. So shout out to you, Granny, if you're watching. Um, but one of the conversations we were having about the work that I do, uh, back in the day, she was like, she would ask, "So when are you gonna get a real job?" I feel like I'm doing real work. But again, that just goes to the conversation of like how different their perspectives are because they don't feel like, or at least my grandmother didn't feel like this was real work, real something tangible. Like, but in real life, this is real work, and we're really changing people's lives and really helping enlighten people. Even having conversations like this, and it's so
Yeah.
funny that this is how this ended because I'm really passionate about having conversations. It's
Hmm.
something that I preach everywhere that I go, and I don't like the word preach because my grandfather was a preacher, and I'm running from that heavy. Okay, but so
Okay.
it's something that I talk about heavy because if we
Yeah.
have more conversations like this, we understand the perspective of one another. Even having conversations with my grandmother, I can understand why she feels like this may not be a real job and may not be a real career and does not have real stability. Organizing does not have that real stability, and I understand that. Um, but having that conversation with her is how I came to that understanding. Having this conversation with you is how I came to understand you more and the work that you do and learn from you what it is like to be a Black woman entrepreneur because that's something that I could never be.
Hmm.
So having these conversations are super crucial, and then even being given the platform to have these conversations are even more crucial. Um, I'm going to pause real quick and just say that I started speaking about conversations, and my bunny started making noises over here. So I think he wanted to be a part of that conversation. So if you guys can
That
hear
is
him, shout
hilarious.
out to Stormy. But we are coming on the end of our time. Tracy, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, thank you so much for being so passionate about conversations. I think that's the only way that we can really grow, especially in a time like this when there's so much division and so many
Yeah.
opportunities to shun each other. The more conversations that we can have, the more
Yes.
healing can take place. So, yeah, shout out to Spectrum and Community Grand Rounds for allowing, such a conversation to take place on the platform. And yeah, thanks. I'm glad that I got to hold space with you tonight.
Listen, I'm glad that I got to occupy this space with you, this virtual space at that, with
Yeah.
you too. And you were low key about to steal my job, so I had to I was about to be like, hey, calm down. With that being said, thanks for
Hilarious.
being with us tonight. Thanks for being a part of this conversation. I can't speak anymore, apparently. I want to shout out Tasha Freeman for being so active in our comment section. Shout out to you. And also shout out to Spectrum Health at Lakeland and the Center for Better Health for making this forum possible. This has been a really unique and amazing space to be in. I look forward to seeing you all next week, where our guest will be none other than Minister Edward Brown. It is going to be a really enthralling, I think that's the word I want to use, enthralled conversation with him, with a really unique, I told y'all I can't talk no more. A really unique perspective coming from a religious standpoint. I'm really excited about that. So make sure you're there next week, Wednesday night at 7 p.m. This has been No Cap Wednesday. I hope you feel like there's been no cap. I also got a haircut because we're having no cap. So listen, no cap.
No
Y'all have
cap.
a great night. This has been so much fun. Thank you all for being here.
Bye bye.